The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session, and we would like now to hand over to the co-prosecutor to continue putting questions to the witness.
Thank you, Mr. President. I shall try and speed up and get as much covered as possible today. The last question, Mr. Witness, was to ask you if your father went regularly to Phnom Penh, and you said yes. Now, did he go there on his own, or were there other sector committee cadres who would normally go with him?
Response. Sometimes he went there on his own. Sometimes he was accompanied by another cadre.
As a messenger and somebody who was also responsible for security issues, did you go with your father sometimes when he went to Phnom Penh for meetings?
Response. I only went to the commercial office where I could wait for him there.
The question was, did you go often? I understand you didn't play an active role in the meetings, but did you often go with your father to the Commerce Office quite frequently?
Response. Yes, I went there every single trip when my father was there.
Can you tell us who summoned your father to these various meetings?
Response. I do not know who actually was calling him, but I knew that someone at the upper echelon could have done that.
Thank you. We'll come back to this a bit later. Do you remember if your father and you yourself went to Phnom Penh in the month before the liberation of Phnom Penh on the 17th of April 1975? In other words, May 1975.
Response. I remember this.
Can you tell us what kind of meeting your father took part in May 1975?
Response. He also attended a meeting during the Khmer New Year, but I don't know what kind of meeting it was.
Merci. Thank you. When he went to Phnom Penh in May 75, was Tasarun with him?
Response. Yes, he was. Although I'm not quite sure, but I believe that he could have been with Tasarun at that time.
Can you remember where the large gathering took place in May 1975 in Phnom Penh?
Response. It was conducted at the stadium.
Merci. Est-ce que vous-même vous...
And were you at the stadium at the same time?
Response: No, I wasn't. I went there only at night to watch the play.
Merci.
Thank you. Let's talk about other kinds of meetings that happened after that. Who did your father normally meet with in Phnom Penh among the party leaders when he went to the capital? If you know, that is.
Response: No, I don't know.
Est-ce que vous...
Do you know where he would go for the meetings he was attending?
Response: No, I don't know.
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais lire un extrait.
Mr. President, I'd like to read from E3/57, the interview record on page 5 in the Khmer at 002877704. In French, it's also on page 5, and in English, it's on page 4. And the question is, did you receive any messages about the purge of the Chams or the Vietnamese? And your answer was there was none at the time. If a purge was to take place, the instruction would be given in the Great Assembly during the policy studying session in Phnom Penh. Mostly they called sector and district committees to go to study at the centre. In French, there is a mistranslation that does not apply to the English. Continuation. The district and sector committees took turn in going to study at K3. That's the end of my quote. Mr. Witness, does this enlighten you on the fact that the region head, who was your father, and the district chiefs had meetings in K3?
Response: I may wish to emphasize that I'm not pretty sure on that. I did attend the session. Rather, during the session, in my capacity, I only stopped at the commercial office.
Merci.
Thank you. Apart from meetings, did your father Taleng also go to Phnom Penh to attend major annual assemblies, for example, commemorating the 17th of April or the 30th of September for each year?
Response: Yes, he did.
Est-ce que vous...
And what about yourself? Did you attend major celebrations on the occasion of the 17th of April or the 30th of September in the stadium?
Response: When I was at the sector, I went there only on one occasion.
Qui parmi les dirigeants...
So who from all of those B20 leaders took the floor when you were attending the big assemblies?
Response: I saw Uncle Pol Pot, who took the floor.
Est-ce que votre...
Did your father or yourself attend political study sessions in Borikela?
Response: No, I didn't. But I don't know whether my father also went to the session at that place.
Merci.
Thank you. When your father got back from Phnom Penh after these various meetings, would he normally convene one or several meetings for Sector 105 to tell the cadres and the Sector 105 members about the different instructions that he himself had been given?
Response: Yes, he did. Normally, after getting back from Phnom Penh, he would convene meetings where he invited people from district to attend.
Est-ce que vous...
What were the subjects of these meetings usually, in which he debriefed on instructions he'd been given in Phnom Penh?
Response: I don't know what actually was being discussed in those meetings, but I saw district chiefs would be coming to attend such meetings.
À part votre...
And apart from your father and the cadre who would go with him to Phnom Penh, did other 105 cadres go to Phnom Penh for training sessions or for meetings?
Response: Yes, there were the deputy chiefs, or first and second deputy secretaries of the sector who would attend such meetings.
Est-ce qu'il était...
Would 105 cadres who had been convened to meetings in Phnom Penh often not come back to Sector 105 after?
Response:
En...
I'm afraid I didn't get the French translation of the response. Could I please hear that again?
Response: Yes, that was the case.
Qui...
Who, as far as you were aware, because you worked in the telegram section, convened the 105 cadres, the ones who didn't come back after, and who sent the telegrams?
Response: I don't know, but normally the telegram would be addressed to 870.
Oui, merci.
Thank you. Those are the telegrams that were sent by the sector to 870. But here I'm talking about the convocations to meetings in the centre. In other words, messages from the centre. So was this 870 or was it particular individuals who were sending these convocations?
Response: No, Normally, no name was mentioned in the letter on the envelope. It only addressed 870.
Merci. Je vais.
Thank you. Let me read out an extract from the interview record. E358, dated 21 November 2008, on page 4 in the Khmer version, ERN 00239937. In French, page 4. In English, also page 4. And this is what you told the investigators. I quote, "Apart from that, Nunchia sent to the region Atasopia or to my father typewritten messages to go to study in Phnom Penh. My father and Ta Kampun, sector deputy chief, were killed while they were sent to study in the final session in Phnom Penh. Before my father and Ta Kampun were called to go to study, there was a typewritten letter in an ordinary writing, non-coded form from Nun Chia to K17 office, calling the sector deputy chiefs in charge of education, including Ta So Kim An alias May and another district chief Cham, to go to study. And they disappeared forever." End of quote. Do you remember saying that? And how did you know that it was in fact Nun Chia who sent the summons?
Response: Yes, I do. That happened occasionally. And when 870 addressed a letter to him, then they would put the term Nun or Ham.
Et concernant la.
And concerning the convocation to May and to Jam, was it Nun who sent that invitation, or was it M?
Response: It was Uncle Nguyen who would call or ask for some men or forces.
Et concernant.
What about Tachun? Chun. Who sent for him to come to Phnom Penh?
Response: they would be sent at the same time with others.
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez si.
Can you remember if Tachun and May and Cham were arrested when you were still in Sector 105, in other words, before your father's death?
Response: Yes, I do remember this.
Pour les besoins de la transcription, Monsieur le Président.
For the needs of the transcription, we have on file E3/1645, where Tachun's name appears as number 128 of a list of S21 prisoners of November 77. Also on file, there is the S21 confession of Sokim An alias Achar May, dated 26 October 1977 and which carries reference D175/3.78. D175/3.78. Mr. Witness, apart from those cadres whose names I have quoted to you and which you mentioned yourself, were there many arrests during transfers to Phnom Penh from Sector 105 when you were there?
Response. At that time, there was no huge arrest was made yet. Only these 3 people were arrested. These 3 individuals. And later on, more people were arrested.
Thank you. We will come back to this. When did you start working on decoding telegrams in Sector 105? Was it, as I believe you said this morning, before April 1975, or was it after that date?
Response. It before April 1975.
Donc est-ce que votre père recevait...
Did your father receive telegrams from the centre before 1975? I say the centre. That can be the place where the Khmer Rouge leaders were situated, not in Phnom Penh, of course.
Response. Prior to 1975, yes.
Est-ce que vous savez...
Do you know what the telegrams that you were entrusted with decoding were about? What sort of content did they have?
Response. It is more about the day-to-day situation and with some brief instructions. During that time, the country was in war.
Est-ce qu'à l'époque, par...
But in those instructions, was there already references to enemies that had to be singled out?
Response. No.
À partir de...
All right, and when did that begin? Was it after April 1975?
Response. Yes.
Concernant votre...
As for your qualification as a telegram decoder, did you ever go to Phnom Penh for some further training on secret telegram codes between 1975 and the end of 1977?
Response. No.
Est-ce que vous pourriez...
Could you briefly tell the Chamber what procedure was followed for incoming telegrams to be decoded in Sector 105? In absolutely practical terms, what happened when a telegram came in from the centre to Sector 105? What were the different phases of the decoding process?
Response. Can I clarify this? Are you referring to the messages, telegrams to the center, or from the center, how we report it or how we decode our letters? The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, the witness appears to have problem understanding the question. Could you repeat it?
Thank you, yes. I want to hear about the procedure that was followed when telegrams coming into Sector 105 from the centre for your father were firstly received and then decoded before the message actually got to your father.
Response. First, the letters would then be typed by a group of typists, and the telegrams decoders would be assigned to deal with the letter separately. For those who decoded telegrams, they were tasked with this particular duty. And when it comes to the secret codes, then only some certain people understood this. But those who received the telegrams, they were meant to receive the telegrams, nothing else.
Were there different kinds of telegrams? Were there telegrams that weren't in code? Were there others that had a simple code and others that had a more cryptic code?
Response. There were two types of codes used in the telegrams. The 10 digits coded telegrams, and another one which is more complicated to understand.
Est-ce que vous-même
Did you master all of those codes, or were there certain sets of codes that were too cryptic and that you could not access?
Response. I only understood the 10 digits kind of coding system, not other technique.
quels étaient alors
Then what kind of codes were you unable to decode? What types of telegrams were you unable to decode because they may have been more confidential? Can you please tell us anything about the messages that your father would have received?
Response. No, my father didn't tell me about this. However, when we looked at the telegrams, we could see the number coded into different numbers, the numbers that we didn't understand, but understood by others.
vous avez dit devant les juges
Before the co-investigating judges, as recorded in E3/58, on Khmer page 4, ERN 00239937, and on page 4 of the French and English versions, you said the following. In terms of security work, I sent messages to Nun Chia or Hum Nun brother number 2 typewritten letters. They were coded numbers, but I cannot recall them. It had to be written in coded letters. I could not understand the contents of those coded letters. It was only my father who could understand those contents because there was another set of secret codes for reading them. End of quote. Mr. Witness, can you please tell this chamber what you did with messages that were encrypted in sets of codes that you were unable to decode or to which you did not have access? Messages that were from Nuncia on security matters.
A point of clarification. The encrypted number was in the numerical form. For example, it may read 102. We do not understand what it was meant. But if you look at the title, it addressed to brother number 2. But as for the number, we did not decode the number because it needs another level of decoding, which was not within my responsibility. I left the number as it was. But as for the title, we did not keep it there. We had to decode it. For example, if this message was addressed to any particular recipient, we would decode it. So normally we decode from the numbers into letters, and we had to put them together to make sense as a message.
Merci. Alors, je vais...
Thank you. I have some supplementary questions regarding telegrams that were sent from the party center or that were sent from your father from Sector 105. Can you please tell us who within Sector 105, aside from your father, had the power to communicate directly via telegram with the center of the party? Was there any one individual within Sector 105, aside from your father, who had the discretion to communicate with the party center?
And at that time, no one was allowed. As for Division 902, they had their telegram office, and they would communicate it by themselves. But as far as the Sector 105 was concerned, he was the only person who communicated via telegram to the center.
Merci.
Thank you. And since Division 920 also had its own telegram office, were telegrams exchanged between Division 902 and Sector Office 105?
No, there was no telegram communication between Division 902 and Sector 105.
Est-ce que vous savez...
Just now you talked about Office 870, Party Center. Do you know what the purpose of that office, Office 870, was exactly?
That I do not know.
Si vous n'en connaissez pas les...
And if you're unaware of its raison d'être, which cadres worked at the party center? Which cadres worked at 870? When a telegram was sent to 870, do you know who exactly was the recipient?
At the time, the telegram was sent to ANCALS.
Et ici, quand vous parlez de
And when you talk about, or when you refer to the uncles, do you know exactly who the uncles are referring to, or referred to?
During the Democratic Cambodia era, uncles referred to Nuon Chia, Pol Pot, Khieu Samphan. We address them as uncles or Om.
Merci. Est-ce qu'il est arrivé
Did Sector 105 ever receive telegrams from Mr. Pol Pot himself, or did Sector 105 ever address telegrams specifically to Mr. Pol Pot without making direct reference to Office 870?
No, it did not mention it.
Vous avez mentionné tout
Just now you stated that Mr. Nunchia would summon cadres from Sector 105 to attend meetings. And you stated that confidential messages would be sent to Mr. Nunchia on matters of security. How was Mr. Nunchia addressed on those telegrams summoning cadres to attend meetings? What was the name that he used?
Through telegrams, my father addressed him as brother or bong. I did not address him so, but my father did address him as brother or bong.
Merci. Est-ce que Nunchia
Did Nunchia ever send telegrams to this sector concerning security matters and activities related to security matters?
I do not recall.
Je vais lire, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, with your leave, I wish to quote an additional passage from document E3/58, ERN Khmer page 400239937, on page 4 of the French version as well as on page 4 of the English version. It relates to security matters and telegrams that were written in secret code. I wish to quote an additional passage. Prior to the death of my father, Nunchia had given regular instructions on security matters, such as the need to be vigilant of Vietnamese enemies or infiltrated enemies or the ambitions of Vietnam, and ideological tasks for education at the district level. He summoned certain cadres to take part in educational sessions in Phnom Penh, and as we saw later, those cadres never returned. Did you ever witness Nunchia issue instructions on security matters, on maintaining vigilance, and on the presence of enemies in those telegrams?
I recall some instruction, at that time, instruction also served as the reminders for cadres in general. Of course, there was such instruction.
Est-ce que ces instructions
And can you please specify as to whether those instructions were issued via telegram or if those instructions were made during meetings? Is that part and parcel of the response you were providing? Are you referring to telegrams or are you referring to instructions that were issued during meetings held in Phnom Penh and that in which your father took part?
There was instruction through telegrams that we had to raise our vigilance. The situation at that time was very pressing, and we had to adhere to the instruction.
Merci. Quand vous parlez de vigilance,
Thank you. And when you talk about vigilance of the enemies, what exactly do you mean? How was vigilance construed during the Khmer Rouge period?
At that time, there were enemies fighting with our forces along the border, and there were also warfares among different factions, different groups internally. That's why we had to adhere to the instruction. If I had to elaborate on the situation of enemies at that time, it would be very long-winding because there were a lot of elements of enemies at that time.
très bien.
Very well. So in short, when you refer to infiltrated enemies in this particular context, what exactly are you referring to?
To my understanding, my personal understanding, the infiltrated enemy were the ones who did not fall in lines with the instruction of the organization, those who deviated from the instruction. So those people were no longer trusted by the organization, and they were no longer given any task to handle. And in addition, in certain circumstances, they would be detained as well. So that was only the differing views from the organization, and those people were considered infiltrated enemy. They were not the enemy, the Vietnamese enemy who were fighting along the border.
Est-ce que certains cadres dans le
Was it possible for some cadres within Sector 105 to be accused of being traitors or spies?
Back then, those who had disappeared, they announced that those people were the traitors. Some were accused of the members of the traitorous network or CIA. May was also charged charged with the network of CIA, and May was also charged of associating with the Vietnamese enemy.
Merci pour ces précisions.
Thank you very much for that explanation. In addition to telegrams that were signed by Office 870, did Division 105 ever receive telegrams signed by Dun? D-O-E-N is how the name is spelled.
I do not recall. I don't think that name existed.
Est-ce que le secteur 105
Did Sector 105 ever receive telegrams from Mr. Kyo Song-pon himself?
That I am not clear.
Je vais lire, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, with your leave, of course, I wish to read out another extract from PVE 3/58 on page 4 of the Khmer. The passage is also found on pages 4 of the French and English versions. The witness says the following in response to a question put by the co-investigating judges. With respect to issues relating to material social affairs and anything that didn't have to do with security matters, telegrams were sent to Kyo Song-pon alias Hem. In plain language, when he sent back his instructions or assignments, he signed them and used the name Hem. For instance, when he attributed assignments to the sector, K17, for instance, would further assign to the trade or economics section logistical tasks to support the central level on matters pertaining to petroleum, machinery, medicine, clothing, etc. End of quote. Now, just now, you stated that Hem also received telegrams, just as he had sent telegrams. Therefore, do you stand by this statement, Mr. Witness, in terms of the issues that were being dealt with? Mr. Kyo Song-pon sent telegrams relating to material, equipment, healthcare, and social affairs, etc.
Yes, as I stated there, whenever it was related to equipment or so, as you enumerated, he would sign it with the initial Hem.
Merci.
Thank you. On the same issue, did Sector 105 send rice to the party center?
That I do not recall. To my recollection, it sent approximately twice per year.
Est-ce que dans le secteur 105, il y a eu des
Were there problems of malnutrition or famine within the cooperatives of Sector 105 during the period from 1975 to 1977?
Yes, there was the prevalence of malnutrition and food shortages, but it was not in a desperate situation.
Mais malgré cela, le riz
And despite that, rice was sent to Phnom Penh twice a year. Is this accurate?
Yes.
J'aimerais maintenant montrer.
I wish now to present the witness with a certain number of telegrams, since he worked within the decoding and encoding section under his father. With your leave, Mr. President. I wish to have projected E3/1191 and to begin with this particular telegram before moving on with subsequent ones.
Yeah.
President, you may proceed.
Alors, les télégrammes que je vais montrer sont assez courts.
The telegrams that I will be presenting are rather short. They do not exceed 1 page. The first telegram is dated 12 October 1976. It's entitled Telegram 00, signed by a certain Leng and addressed to beloved and missed comrade Dun. There's reference to 105. I will read out the first 2 items of this telegram. Number 1, we arrived at 105 on 11 October at noon. 2, I've also changed my name. My new name is Comrade Chan. The French contains an error. The French says Pan, but in fact, the correct transcription is Chan, C-H-H-A-N. Please only refer to me as Comrade Chan. Point number 2 reads, Mr. Witness, this telegram was received by the party center and decoded at the center. Was the sender of this telegram, so-called Leng, indeed your father?
Yes, back then at Mandolkiri, Lang was my father's name, and that was the only names over there. But as for these particular telegrams, I never saw it at the time.
Si vous n'avez pas vu ce télégramme-ci, est-ce que vous...
And if you never saw this telegram, are you still able to tell this chamber whether this telegram is consistent with the types of telegrams that you encoded or decoded during the time? That is, they contain the same headings. For instance, at the top of the page, you see telegram :00. Does the form correspond to the signatures and salutations that were generally used, also used and applied by your father? For example, are you familiar with the type of format that was used for telegrams that were sent from and to Sector 105?
My brother might have known it better, because back in 1976 I was at that time tasked to drive the truck. So my brother was at that time the one who was involved with this kinds of task.
Merci. Quel était...
Thank you. And what was the name of that brother?
Not my brother, my elder sister. My elder sister by the name of Han.
Merci.
And in that telegram, Leng, your father, states that henceforth he must be called Shan. In fact, he even emphasizes in item 2 to only be referred to as Comrade Chan, C-H-H-A-N. Are you familiar with this?
Chan
Chan or Pan? Are you referring to Chan or Pan?
En anglais et
The English reads Chan, Chan. The French reads Pan, Phan. And then a second reference is made to Chan in the same French version, Chan. I would ask you to be directed to paragraph 2 of the original Khmer version. And please confirm as to whether or not Comrade Chan does indeed refer to your father.
Pan was the family name of my father, because Pan was my grandfather's name. But as for my father, I don't think any point in time he changed his name to Chan. I did not know. In 1976, my elder sister was close to my father working on this matter. She would have known this better than I did.
merci.
Thank you. I wish now to show a second document. E3/1192, which was sent on the same day, on the 12th of October 1976. This is a one-page telegram that was sent by Leng and addressed to beloved brother Nun. Now, it's quite likely that the witness did not or has never seen this telegram because it is dated the same date.
Donc je demande l'autorisation de pouvoir
I therefore seek leave from the chamber to show the witness this particular document and base my question on that.
The President, you may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Il s'agit
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is a telegram, as you can see, sent by Leng. Now, is this Leng your father who's signing at the bottom?
Response: yes.
alors
So it's addressed to beloved brother Nun. Now, earlier you told us that Nun meant Nun chair. Can you confirm to us that that is also the case on this telegram?
I'm sorry, I need to...
You may proceed, say the President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think perhaps the first question should be, is the witness familiar with this document? He did tell us that he wasn't doing translation at this time, that he was a driver, I think he said. So perhaps first we could see if he's familiar. Of course, he knows his father's name. Obviously, he knows the name of his father. But whether or not he's familiar with his document, perhaps that foundation could be laid first, and then we could get into the substance.
Monsieur le Président, je crois.
Mr. President, I believe that earlier on I said that with the telegram that bears the same date as the previous one, that probably his sister encoded the telegram. So I explained that I didn't think that the witness had seen it, but I do wish to know if the witness can tell us if this is the way that his father would normally address Nun Chia, beloved brother Nun.
Well, I can tell you that my client's name is Nun Chia. I can tell you that. And I can tell you that the witness's father's name is Lang, so I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of this exercise is. The document speaks for itself. The witness hasn't been asked yet if he's seen the document. He's already said that on this date he wasn't in the business of dealing with telegrams. He was doing something else entirely. So, again, I think we really need to orient ourselves in time, each and every time, and if it's outside the scope of the witness's particular duties at that time, then I just don't see the utility of it.
Je vais bien poser la question.
I'll ask the question, but we know the answer already, Mr. President. Witness, have you ever seen this telegram?
Response: No, I haven't seen it. However, the format of the telegram is familiar because it's my elder sibling who was attached to dealing with this when I was driving.
Merci.
Thank you. And when you were told to encode telegrams, you said that your sister worked for your father for a short period on telegrams. And then when you were doing this, well, can you recognize on this telegram the way in which your father would tend to address Nun Chia?
Response: He would be addressed the same way as the message already stated. He would address him as brother or bong.
Merci. Au point.
Thank you. In the second paragraph of the telegram, it says, we have assigned a commerce group for Phnom Penh. Comrade Chuan has received them. C-H-U-O-N for Chuan. Is this the same Comrade Chuan that you mentioned earlier on, who was a member of the 105 sector commerce group?
Response: Yes, he's the same person. The President: Thank you, the co-prosecutor and Mr. Witness. It is now appropriate moment for today's adjournment. The chamber will adjourn now, and the next session will be resumed by tomorrow at 9 a.m. For tomorrow's session, the chamber continues hearing the testimony of Pan Wan alias Kam Pan, and also we will hear the testimony through video link of TCCP1 after the conclusion of this this witness. Mr. Pan Wan, your testimony has not yet been complete, and that the chamber wishes to hear your testimonies for tomorrow's sessions as well. So you are now invited to come to the chamber again tomorrow Court officer is now instructed to assist with West-Su unit to ensure that the witness is properly accommodated, safe and sound, and also have him return to the courtroom by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Security personnel are now instructed to bring all the accused persons back to the detention facility and have them return to the courtroom by 9 a.m. except Mr. Ieng-sari, who is ordered to be brought only to his holding cell downstairs, where he can observe the proceedings through remote participation. The court is now adjourned.